stopped taking his meds. 10 days later, naked, inserting things in himself, eating his own excrement. It was like a zoo. So one of them's come up behind me, towel, started choking me out. Spat at, people trying to stab me with bladed weapons. People have set themselves on fire. The worst injuries I ever saw were people who had self-harmed. It's race wars in there. Big money to be made in prison. He just stood there screaming. He could see skin peeling off him. He had a ruler with a blade on. He went straight down the door, sliced his face wide open. Big lad. And I mean a big lad, 6'2", big arms, gym head. Can I have a word, Miss Samworth? Says, yeah, no problem, you know. He went, no, can I have a word? I knew what I was going to say.
What's the worst thing you can remember ever experiencing? Are there any murders in jail? Are there any screws that murder the cons? Do people piss in people's food? Would the screws turn blind eyes if a was getting weighed in? I mean, how do you deal with someone that's killed a child that behaves like that? What stops you from sneaking in their cell and wringing their neck? I want to say a quick thank you to our sponsors, Gold Seal. I use their products every single day, and now I finally get to work with them. I use their products for anti-inflammatory, reduced anxiety, better sleep, and mental clarity. I'm going to put a link to their website in the description, along with a 10% discount code for you to take advantage of. Go and have a look at their website, see if there's anything in there for you. I hope you enjoy this week's episode, and good health. Sam, thank you for coming on.
Liam, you're welcome.
I've been desperate to get a prison officer on since I actually started the whole podcast journey, and doing 11 years in Strange Ways, one of the most hard-hitting prisons in the country, is that's quite something. So I want to talk. I want to cover with you. I want to get real. I want this to be a hard-hitting podcast, full of truth and honesty and vulnerability. Your career as a prison officer, the highs, the lows, the horrendous parts, and the sort of devastating lasting effects that the whole system will have on you. So to get a better idea, we'll obviously go back and summarise your life before you become. Do you want to be called a screw, a prison officer?
I've never minded, right? They're not guards, never been guards. They always use that in the press. Me, the term screw never bothered me. But again, it depends how you say it. If somebody come up in your face, you screw, then you might be offended. But, you know, it is what it is. So you can call me whatever you want, mate. Okay. But first, let me just say, don't matter what prison you're working in, they all have the moments. So although Strange Ways is infamous, you know, particularly now, not good places to work, not for anybody. They all have the moments.
Yeah, I suppose it's a volatile environment that can erupt just like that.
Yeah, of course, it's spontaneous. It is. You live on seat your ass a lot of time. It's adrenaline.
Because you used to work the door, didn't you?
I did, yeah. Right, so doorman, I'm not front of house me. I'm not hardest man in the world, you know, stopping people if it's going to kick off, yeah. More back seat, you know, escorting people out, breaking fights up, no problem with that. And I needed the money at that time. I had my own business. Not a lot of people know this. So I had a massage business. Yeah, not like that. Complementary therapies and stuff, mostly female clients. I did the doors to subsidise that. And I also was teaching in the community from college, aromatherapy. So, you know, it belies what I am, really. You know, therapy during the day and at night on the door. But yeah, I worked at a bar called Hannah Ann's in Sheffield. Nice bar, a lot of nurses in. A lot of big hitters went in there. Probably one of the few places you get top boys from, Sheffield United and Chef Wednesday, having a beer and socialising.
And what year and how old were you when you was into the door work and the massaging?
1998, so I was born in 62. I'll let you do the maths. So, you know, I was a certain age. I got some life experience. The thing is, I could talk. So when I worked at Hannah Ann's, first 12 months, I was on my own. Meet and greet, clearing people out end at night. But I have a nice manner, a bit of charm or whatever, you know, and you get to know people. And in confrontation, at some point, you know, if you've got that charm and that, you can win most people over. So.
And you got a rugby past, haven't you?
Yeah. So I got a toughness from the rugby, you know. Rugby, whatever, if you're playing grassroots rugby, it's hard. It's like Sunday league football. The lower down you are, more fights, more kicking, that sort of thing. So I got that toughness, which stood me in good stead as a prison officer, combined with looks, presence.
Well, rugby players listening to this will probably take this and wear it as a badge of honour, but my background is working the door. And the toughest crowd to deal with when they kicked off were the rugby lads. They were a fucking handful.
We used to go out a lot, and there was some lads who could fight and that. But I'd like to think the crowd, because two teams. I used to play for Sheffield Tigers for a long time, and I played for Sheffield Oaks, two Sheffield teams with Dronfield in between, which is in Notts Links, Derbyshire. But it was junior rugby, so you're not your Leicester and Bath. However, whatever level you're playing at, there is a physicality to it. But we, on the whole, were a good set of lads, well behaved. If someone got in bother, then you definitely would stick together.
Did you get in much trouble as a youngster, or when you were sort of in your early 20s?
I did. Rugby definitely saved me. So I started drinking at 15, like you do. But certainly teenage years, early 20s, got into a lot of bother. I ended up in court 4 times in a very short period of time for fighting. Because back then, so we're talking then, 1982, round about that time, yeah, they'd have you in court, you get a caution from the judge. Some people think judges can't give you cautions, it's police, but they do. So you're in court, in front of them, there's a guy next to me, a minor, yeah, he's got a black eye, you've got a black eye, you shake hands, £80 fine and a caution. Anyway, short period of time, ends up in front of this judge, so I've got my head down me. He says, young man, do you mind lifting your head up? He says, I know you. So don't think. He says, you were in here about 3 months ago, weren't you, fighting? He says, I'm telling you now. So bit of a wake-up call. Just rugby. I just went with rugby. Saturday night, we were at rugby lads. If you got bladdered or whatever, they looked after you and that sort of thing. So
channeled your aggression into the sport.
Well, I forgot to say, so 20 to 21, I lost my mum. So she was really young. Brought up single parent. She was 38, my mum. Unexpected death. You think you handle it well at the time. Me, off the rails. Plus, very soon after that, couple of months, fractured my skull playing rugby. That was me out of rugby for 18 months. Drinking, just angry.
I can well imagine.
Yeah, it became, well, you can guess, can't you? My mother, lovely. It breaks you, doesn't it?
I think that's how heartbreak comes out in a lot of young men. You can't make sense of it or really sort of digest what the hell's just happened. No,
I won't let family help me. The injury itself was way worse than I let on at the time. I saw, like I said, I can remember everybody. There was a guy called Strachan, a consultant at Northern General. Me left eye stopped moving for a period of time. I mean, literally stopped moving. Big clot on my brain.
Head collision?
Yeah. He said, never again. You have another collision, you can die. I was in a bad way. Didn't tell anyone, shut myself out from my family, went it alone. Bad place.
Did you sink into depression?
I would say, yeah. However, at that age, you don't, you're not looking at things. One of my mates, who was a Colt, played with him, he was 18, Alan Brookfield, he pretty much saved my life because he come to me 21, 22 years old. I was like 21 stone, normally playing rugby, band about 16. Rocky 4, turned up on my door, right, we're going up on Winkerbank Hill, which overlooks Meadow Hall shopping centre in Sheffield. Had me running up and down hill, bricks on my back, him on my back. Over 8 months, got me back down 16 stone.
And did you call it a day after the head collision?
No.
Carried on?
Yeah.
You threw caution to the wind there, didn't you?
I did. Again, my family, close family, obviously I hadn't got my mum then, but they were like, you need to pack this in or whatever. I weren't listening. I would say that's first time I suffered a bit of PTSD. It can come and go in people's lives. Obviously, squaddies suffer forever, but I had nightmares 6 months before I went back on a rugby pitch, smashing my head, dying, all that sort of thing. However, I got back on a pitch and rest is history. So
what inspired you to become a screw?
To become a screw, right, I did 20 years in engineering.
I'm going to use screw because it's less of a tongue twister.
No, that's fine. So I've done my engineering, a lot of dangerous jobs, dirty jobs, hard jobs, long shifts, days and nights. Summit in himself, got made redundant a good few times. 1998, the college work was to start my own business. Being a man in that business, you know, massages and stuff like that, tough. There was no therapy centres that had male therapists and the like, doing the door work and everything. I wanted some stability in my life, and I wanted, you know, maybe a pension or whatever. Kev Sabrolski, he was a good friend's cousin and also a friend. He'd been a prison officer a good few years. Get into it, Sambo, where you go. So I started applying, got a job in the private sector in Salford, Forest Bank Prison. That's got quite a reputation.
What cat's that?
It's Cat B. A lot of prisons are Cat B. So yeah, I went off there. I commuted for 12 months from Sheffield.
What's the process to become a screw?
There,
Yeah.
fitness test,
Yeah.
which they're not so bothered now because people can't pass them. Fitness test, interview, obviously blood pressure, all that sort of thing.
DBS, mental health checks?
Yeah, DBS. No mental health checks, really. You know, I have people who start a job who've had years of depression. And here's the thing, and I've thought about this as well, because somebody's got poor mental health, should it negate them from doing a job like that?
You've got to be able to make the right decision at the right time, haven't you? And quick.
Yeah, good screws have. However, I worked with plenty that couldn't do that. So if you break the workforce down, both Forest Bank, private sector and Strangeways, it's definitely a team effort. You've got leaders of men, you know, people with bottle who'll front people, and then you've got people who maybe don't have communication skills, maybe don't have a presence, who would follow you into battle.
Where was your ranking in the system?
Me, I got no ambitions above getting both prison officer, yeah. I did at one bit think about becoming a senior officer, which is next step up in uniform, wing manager. Then there's PO, that's the next step up, 2 pips, and then obviously governors. Me, I was quite happy doing what I did.
And you were very much front line.
Yeah, definitely.
First responder.
I would have always been a landing screw. So how Strangeways work, if I tell you, so there's staff on every wing. A couple of them staff will be response staff. They'll have a radio. If it kicks off on wing next door, you're going. However, if it kicks off on wing next door, everybody would go. Literally, you know, back then when I started, it was amazing. You know, K-Wing, 200 prisoners, 6 staff on landings, kicked off in day, there'd be 40 or 50 screws running on. Their job, primarily, lock people behind the doors. The wing staff would be dealing with the incident. So me, I had no ambitions above that. I loved it. The interaction, dynamic security, right? That staff-prisoner relationships. That made it work. Prison is boring. It's boring for prisoners. It's boring for staff. Them interactions all day on K-Wing. Plus, this is how you sort of become someone. I don't mean someone tough or whatever. I mean, if I'm dealing with someone, you know, might be first time in prison, people are looking and watching you. How you speak to them, how you interact with them, how you treat them, yeah? And they do gain respect for you. So say somebody come on a wing, they're new, they're kicking off, they're not happy, in my face, somebody might, hold on, don't be having to go at Miss Samworth, do you know what I mean? He's all right, he'll sort things out. And they get to know you, and they like you, and they respect you. And I used to say, I'm not sure whether it is respect, but it is quite definitely.
Before you was moved to Strangeways, would you say working in other prisons prepared you nicely for that, or would it have made no difference at all because Strangeways is Strangeways?
Right. So private sector, yeah, very few staff. The wages were poor. Looking back now, I didn't know any better. I'd never done that job. I didn't know what it was like. When I said to work in a real prison, Forest Bank is a real prison. Same clientele as Strangeways, yeah, but less staff. No experience. Every prison that opens, there was no experience. So when I started at Forest Bank, it'd been open about 2 years. So they did a good recruitment. They got a few prison officers from public sector, but mostly they were people off street, supermarkets, wherever, but they got something about them. Someone got some bottle, some big lads, you know, people who could talk, lasses who could talk. You know, someone's in my face, they want to have it. There's somebody this side of me, lass, you know, why are you being like that? Don't be like that, bum, 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 bum. team effort. But when I went to Strangeways, I had to forget I'd ever been a prison officer. Different regime. On the training course, I was met with hostility. You know, I'm quite loud, talk for Britain, bit of a character.
Who greeted you with hostility?
The training centre. I went down like a lead balloon. One, they got a bit of beef because I were from Yorkshire. The guy who taught us, who was the main training guy, being a prison officer for years, been in a training centre, was called Graham. At the start of our course, he quite definitely hated me. I ended up in a lot of bother. By the end of the course, he changed his opinion, and until he retired, me and him got in. If I saw him about the jail, he'd come up and he'd go out of his way to speak to me. But a week in, I'm sat, so there's, 24 of us on a course, yeah. Can't remember exactly how many lasses, maybe 5 or 6 lasses. One of them had come from ambulance service. Very much upper self, look at me, you know, pouty lips and all that sort of thing. I didn't know this till years later. She's gone upstairs and said, there's a lot of bullies on this course. Yeah, me being the biggest. I was the biggest lad on our course. So we're on our first week of training. We're all sat. Nobody's come in. Nobody spoke. Gets to dinner time. Everyone's looking at each other now, getting a bit nervous. We don't know what's going on. They started taking us out one at a time. Me being the last one. Upstairs. I goes in. As everyone's come down, no one spoke. You know, first person, what's happening? Nothing. Not saying anything. Last one upstairs, gets in front of them. I'll not use the word, but from the off, see you next Tuesday. That's what he called me. And he kept calling me. You're a bully. You're this. You're that. So I'm stood there taking it. There's the PO over the training centre. There's Graham, who's a tutor, and there's 2 other lads. One who teaches CNR, control and restraint. They just went at me. You're going to fail this course. We're not going to let you pass. So when they'd finish, I'm almost in tears. I need this career, pension, all the... I said, can you tell me what I've done wrong? Shut it, you. See you next Tuesday. Go. So I goes downstairs, on the way downstairs. Again, I've no idea what's happened. I walks in, cap in hand. Do you know that term? It's a Yorkshire term. I said, listen, if I've offended anyone or upset anyone, I'd like to apologise. However, I need all your help because they've told me I'm not going to pass this course and I need to pass it. And I had to eat humble pie every day. We got a lot of coursework, yeah? Me, I'm not studious. I was going home 3 or 4 hours coursework, coming into the training centre, photocopying it, giving it everyone, helping everyone. Like I said, years later, I found out it was this last, but yeah, it was hard. And when I went into the jail, I was a bully. All the jail were talking about this bully on the training course, yeah? So that set me up nicely. I passed the training course. Number 1 governor's there, knew who I were. Just give me a nod. The PO who had give it me said, right, you are going to K-wing. He says, that's my wing. He shook me hand and he says, and I'm happy to have you working on there. So that was a bit of a...
So you joined, you become a prison officer for the right reasons. You were looking for a career, pension, stability. What about other screws? What other motives are there to become? Because I can imagine. Power hungry. Are there bullies?
Yeah, of course they are. Of course they are. The motivation, I don't know. There was a lot of people went in. I don't know. I think they imagined it was going to be like school. You get a big turnover. Certainly in the private sector. People on my course in the private sector, I just don't know what they were expecting. Me, when I did my interview, Forest Bank, I remember sitting in a car, I shit myself. I'm sat in my car an hour before, I've come from Sheffield, I was shitting it.
And what sort of things were you scared about?
I didn't know what to expect. I'm going to be fighting. I'm going to have to fight people. You know, I had no idea what it was like, but other people, very blasé, you know, clueless. I'll tell you how tough it were in the private sector. We did this training. The first week, they took us into the prison. We must have just looked like victims. They had movement to work. So from the wings, what they call Main Street, maybe 10 metres wide, 300 prisoners. We're at the end, walking past looking, wait till you get in here. You're going to get it, you. Straight up to me, one of them like that. Who do you think you are? Awful. You know, saw my eyes straight away, thinking, Jesus, what am I doing here? We had a lad who'd done 25 years in Isle of Wight, HMP, public sector prison. He couldn't get a job at Strangeways, but his family were in North West, so he'd come to private sector prison. He left after 2 hours of the first shift. I saw him walking down Main Street. How's it going? All right. Where are you going? I'm going home. I've done. Can't do this. So it was that different for what he'd been. And he worked on Isle of Wight, Parkhurst, Roughneck. Not having it. He'd done. But, you know, what I don't know what people's motivation was. People have said to me, going into a job for a career and a pension, that's wrong thing to do. You know, a lot of people go in and they honestly believe that it can change people's lives.
There's a line in McVicker. I don't know if you've seen that film on.
I have. That is one of the probably most real films, I would say.
It's my favourite prison film by a long shot. Roger Daltrey, Adam Faith, brilliant film.
Yeah.
But there's a particular line in there, and the screw is talking to a con, and he tells him, "You still got 5 years left to serve." And he went, "Yeah, but you're in here for life, ain't you?"
Yeah, it is.
And it makes me think, as a prison officer yourself, after a while, did it feel like you were a prisoner?
You get absorbed in the job. I worked shitloads of hours, me. My missus was what I now call a prison widow, yeah? I didn't see my missus. I'd be up at 5, had a house at 6. If you were lucky, I'd be home at 9:30, sometimes 10, 10:30. I didn't see my daughter for 5 years. 5 years. She didn't see me. You know, she's in bed. She's in primary school. I come home, she's in bed. If you look at my diaries, I've still got all my diaries. I worked like 3 weeks with no day off and no benefit. Earning good coin, but to no benefit. So, and I always said that I left the job at the gate. I didn't. It was quite obvious. You know, when I ended up leaving the job, you know, I didn't leave it. My missus had she'll be buzzing now off this, but in my first book, I asked her, yeah. So I'm an author, the writer, I work with the writer, yeah. He says, go to your missus, ask her to jot something down. We'll put it in a book. So I asked her. 4 sides of A4 she wrote down in tears. You can see me watering up now. I read it. I was heartbroken. You know, one instance, and I do remember it, he says, you phoned up, you've had a death in custody. She said, I'd got myself done up. I'd done all house, cooked your meal. You come in, drop your clothes at door, which I did. They stank. They went straight in bin, didn't shower, didn't speak to me, went to bed. And I'm like, fuck. You know what I mean?
Was there many death in custodies?
More frequent now. I'm glad you've asked that because I must have been involved myself. Because I worked on a prison healthcare, people are in crisis, and a big wing like K-Wing, you save people. Nobody ever talks about that. There's no figures for it. You know, I must have been involved, not necessarily first on scene, but maybe half a dozen people hanging, cut them down, got them breathing again, that sort of thing. It never gets talked about. It never gets talked about all that good work or whatever. But deaths in custody is one of them touchy points, yeah. People bring it up, figures. So we had a lad at Strangeways. He ended up on healthcare. He had a marks around his neck, tried to hang himself. He was on E-wing, couldn't deal with his crime. He was his offences were against children. That should have been a death. They saved him. I don't know how they saved him. He'd been dead like 20 minutes anyway. Saved him. He went to Risley prison and then he did it successfully. So Risley, bad reputation for that death. However, there's some people, it don't matter what prison they're in, terms, conditions, they're going to take their own life. Some people can't deal with like the loneliness, the crimes.
How else do they take their lives in there? Have you ever had a con set himself on fire?
Yeah, people have set themselves on fire. Bad cell fires. They had the first lad ever to get lifed off on video link. Do you know what a video link is?
You appear in court and...
Yeah, you're in the prison, but you appear in court. So this lad, he'd come from dispersal prison. I'm not sure whether it was Monster Mansion, you know, long-term Cat A prison. It was, whatever reason, he'd been kicked back to Cat B. He weren't happy. Bad cell fire. He got himself under the bed, wet blankets over his head and that, smoke on the wing. It was horrendous. I weren't involved in that. My mates were. He got lifed off for that. for endangerment, reckless endangerment.
What would be the purpose of setting your cell alight? Protesting against something?
Yeah, unhappy with stuff. Some people don't know how to cope. It's like self-harming, you know. Vast majority of self-harm in prison is manipulation, quite definitely. You know, a lot of people spit feathers over that. When you're in the job, you see it. However, there's a percentage who usually trauma, abuse as children, might have self-harmed for years or whatever, not necessarily wanting to take their own life, but the level that they might cut or self-harm in some other way is such that they put themselves at risk.
Were there people in jail that you thought they shouldn't be here, they should be in hospital?
Yeah, of course. Loads. There's not enough spaces. Right. You know, early 90s, my mate worked in mental health 40-odd years. He shut units down. You know, he was put manager of units. They shut a lot of mental health units down, hospital wards. Then people end up in prison, yeah? When I worked on a prison healthcare, 8 years, people in crisis, they should never have... We've had people who... They shouldn't have gone to prison. They should have gone straight to mental health hospital. But postcode lottery, you know, you might get 5 people for 1 bed. 4 of them in prison. Public are safe, they're in prison. Person in the community might get that bed. It's horrendous. There's a massive percentage of people who should never go to prison.
Well, when I've read prisoners taking part in a dirty protest,
yeah,
which you'll be able to explain that
yeah,
a lot better than me, but I've always thought, well, you've got to be mentally ill to do that. There's other ways and means to get attention or get your point across, but a dirty protest, I mean, just have you experienced that?
Yeah, quite definitely. Right, let me split it into 2 categories. We've got people, serious mental health problems, yeah, awaiting hospital, unmedicated. See, people who are well, serious mental health, when they get well, they think they don't need a medication. They stop taking it. We had one lad went from playing pool, lucid, nice lad, got on with him, chatting in 10 days. So he's there, stopped taking his meds. 10 days later, naked, inserting things in himself, eating his own excrement. Dirty conditions, they call it now. They've taken a protest out. You know, it's like political correctness. That, you know, people mental health is different to a protest. There were lads on dirty protests. We had, when I was at Forest Bank, about 7 young offenders, 18 to 21. A well-known Scouse gangster at that time. He got them all on protest. He were on protest. 8 cells, all covered in excrement on the cells. Horrendous time. Took a good while to sort them out, maybe 2 weeks. People were coming on the segregation at that time, vomiting and leaving. Nobody wanted to work there. But end of the day, I would leave the segregation, take my clothes off, put a trackie on, close it in bag straight in, wash it when I got home. It was horrendous. People won't understand it. All it's doing is putting a barrier between you and them. But the way I used to look at it, you'd have to get kitted up. The policies say you are to offer them a shower, clean clothes, and clean cell. Yeah. Some would take that, go into another cell, mess that one up, etc. It just makes your job not more difficult. You know, if you're dealing with a dirty protest, you can't do anything else. But I'm quite sure a lot of people watching this will not understand it. Some people might just put it on the walls, yeah? In extreme cases, people covered, head to toe, and they would eat food, and as they produce more, they just cover themselves.
What's the worst thing you can remember ever experiencing?
I couldn't tell you.
Too many to...
Yeah. Maybe I have done in the past, but thinking about it, there's lots of things, you know. Worst thing, that lad, 10 days... eating his own excrement, harming himself, needing hospital bed and they weren't one. You know, might be somebody else cutting, claret everywhere, someone covered in excrement, and then it might just be, you know, somebody first time in prison who shouldn't have been there. There's just, you know, people would say, deaths in custody. I dealt with 2. One at Forest Bank, first stand, and one at Strangeways, yeah. horrendous. So people might cite that as the worst thing I'd ever had to deal with. But, you know, seeing people...
Is it actually finding them dead in the cell?
Yeah. I'm not being casual about that when I said, it is horrendous. Again, there's no counselling, no support. That actual incident for me, right, I was with my colleagues, right? They are my counsellors. You support each other. You imagine you have a governor come on. There was a principal officer stood outside the cell talking about football, laughing and joking, chewing gum with half a dozen lads. There's me, two of my nurse managers, a nurse on duty and another officer I work with, a lass, trying to do CPR on this guy who's quite obviously dead. I started the CPR. You know, people said, why do you do that? It's just something you do. It's either in you or it's not. So you imagine you're in a cell, the body, the smell, everything horrendous, and there's people laughing and joking outside. They didn't need to be there. No consideration. And then Deputy Governor come on. So this PO, as I come out of the cell, he knows what's going on. He says, can you brief the Dep on what's happening? So I looked at the Dep and he's looking at me like I'm not right. And I said, he's fucking hung himself. So the PO said, that's not nice. I says, well, what do you want me to say? So the Dep, he's gone, he's unhappy, you know. PO's chewing me, but they just no thought about anyone else. There was a lad there, not involved, young officer, so he's in the office in bits. He's gone, shaking like a shitting dog, crying, shock. He'd never seen anything like that before. Yeah, and the comments from other people, grow a set, what's up with him, you know, just so the deaf in custody were bad enough, but the way people treat people after and reacted.
Is that because they were just desensitized?
Macho environment.
Ego.
Yeah, a lot of ego, you know, backslapping and all that bollocks. I'm never, ever part of that. So after that, you have a hot debrief. So there's 5 people in that cell with me. So for me, that debrief would have possibly been a governor grade, the PO who was on duty and 5 staff. There's 20 odd people in there. I went in, I'm sat opposite my manager, she knew. She's looking at me, she's going, don't say anything. She's not speaking, don't say anything. People laughing and joking, just, they're not doing something else if they're in there. People who shouldn't have been there. And, you know, they've gone round. Anybody got anything to say? I'm absolutely steaming me. But I didn't say anything. Then there's supposed to be a cold debrief a month later. And then the ombudsman will come in. He'll interview people, draw up a list of people, and then you're waiting on coroner's court, which will be as in-depth as it gets.
Are there any murders in jail?
Yeah, there are.
Are there any screws that murder the cons?
Right, okay, so I can't speak. It was a rough place, 70s and 80s, for the Strange Ways riots. You know, I've heard stories. I couldn't confirm then. It was a brutal place, so I've no doubt that people have died. There's prisoners that have killed other prisoners. Again, it's difficult to understand this. So at Forest Bank, so I'm at Strange Ways now. We get to a lad on the healthcare. The moment I saw him, you know, so him and another lad, one's in the seg, he's on the healthcare. They've basically done an old fella at Forest Bank. They've gone in his cell, taken his tobacco off him, and without going into too much detail, they've battered him to death. Unrecognisable as a human being. Yeah? What people don't understand, they're on camera going in the cell. They've got blood on them, DNA evidence, but they didn't get convicted of murder. You know, there's no witnesses, no camera footage in the cell. They got away with that murder, and it was for like an ounce of tobacco or something like that. You know, it's a very, very dangerous place.
In that scenario, the guy that they murdered, do we know what he was in jail for?
He was in for nothing. I do know.
The reason I ask is,
he weren't a sex offender.
If he was in there for noncing, would the screws turn blind eyes if a nonce was getting weighed in?
Right. Okay. So the VPs, vulnerable prisoners, i.e., them that prey on women and children, who become vulnerable when they get in prison, they're on a wing together. Yeah. There will be some brazen enough to be on normal location in prisons. You know, they'll blag it. Or what you in for? I mean, you never ask anyone. You shouldn't be asking people what they're in for. they'll blag it. Right up until, and we've had them on K-Wing, 200 cons, blag it, week before, Mr. Samworth, needs to have a word. I need to get off here. Because they knew they were going to court and it's going to be in paper. But again, Forest Bank, there was an officer, he couldn't prove it. He was giving information on so-called sex offenders. So I remember a guy, a very intelligent prisoner, shouldn't have been in, white collar type crime. Well-spoken. This officer was what I call a gobshite, you know, trying to put people down, and he'd have the dodgy cons on his side making, you know, he was a bully. So if you were a weak prisoner, he'd be taking piss out of you and other people are laughing, and he got off on that. He picked on this fella because, you know, he was of a certain age and that, you know, maybe not the fittest or whatever. And this fella had everyone laughing at him because every time he said something, trying to put him down, swearing, this fella come back at him. So he put it out that this guy was a sex offender. He ended up in intensive care for months, got battered. So he's telling cleaners, wing cleaners and that, yeah, he's a sex offender. And he did that a few times. So again, you know, people have asked me, I've not been in that situation. If you went in a cell, yeah, and there's like somebody who's into kids, would you save the life or what? I was never in that situation, but people have.
Who runs Strange Ways, the cons or the screws?
Right. I'm glad you've asked me that. So let's go on prison reports a decade apart. 2014, outgoing prison inspector, yeah. Possibly, he said this, possibly the best inspection of any prison ever he'd done. Strange Ways, yeah. A safe place, good communication, prisoners felt safe, staff felt safe, low assaults, low self-harm, everything, you know, all singing, all dancing prison at that time. A decade later, last year, the new prison inspectors labelled it the most dangerous drug rat-infested prison ever. So if we go back when I were there, it's not about you stamping your authority on something. Yeah, on K-Wing, realistically, 6 staff on the ED, evening duty, when I started 2005, 2006, 2007, there's 200 lads running about, chatting, up to no good. 6 of you are not stamping any authority on them, are you? You know, you walk about, you chat, people know you. Staff-prisoner relationships, it makes it safe. Plus, they know if there's going to be a fight in cell 18 on the 2s, Mr. Samworth, you might want to check that out because if an alarm bell goes, they're all behind the doors. So at that time, they had experience. We had good governors. A good governor can make a jail. So it was well run. I would say now, it's not so much the cons running the jail. They don't have the staff to manage them. They don't have the experience to manage them. So a lot of jails are what you call cons jails. They're out of control, loads of drugs, just crazy.
Back in the day,
Yep.
So drug use in jail, we know it goes on, it gets smuggled in. I want to know who predominantly smuggles them in, but also, let's just take Spice for example.
Yep.
Would the screws turn a blind eye if there were cons in the cell getting out their nuts on Spice? Would the screws turn a blind eye
Behind the door?
for an easy life? Just think, okay, well, they're quiet in there.
Okay, so Spice, firstly, wow.
It was probably brown back in your day, wasn't it?
Everyone smoked weed. Started drug testing. So you could get added days back then. You know, if you look 80s, 90s, they could give out governors added days. So if you'd had weed, it's in your bloodstream, whatever, 30 days, you're going to get nicked. Heroin, in and out. So overnight, bringing in a drug testing, you know, jail population went from smoking weed to taking brown.
Is that because it's in and out your system quicker?
Yeah, of course it is.
Was it 3 days? Something like that?
Yeah. Plus, lads could watter up. Have you heard that expression?
No.
So let's just say on K-Wing we used to do piss testing, not official piss testing. We just had a little kit, dip. So they pee in a thing, dip, if there's anything in it. So you'd see the cleaners, bottles and bottles of water, because you can if I was drinking water all day, if I drank 4 litres of water, there's a chance that I'd pass. However, the test would be spoiled. So spice, next level, 2012 about started it in the prison. Weed, me, someone's behind the door, why are you going to go in? You know, you're on night duty, you walk past the cell, you'd smell weed. For me, not a problem. There's no point doing anything. You could put in a suspicion paperwork. So 2 lads in there, possibly smoking weed. Most prison officers just leave them to it. They're behind the door, they're not causing no bother. Spice, different, next level. It destroyed the prison service. I saw it, it came in, bad shit. People had pass out, come round, maybe sick, violent, extremely difficult to deal with. People were dropping dimps, you know, like there's people who can't afford tobacco or stuff. So they go on the yard, maybe a joint of spice, throw it, someone would pick it up unsuspecting, smoke it, crash, bang, gone. Nightmare, still is. Obviously it's gone from green vegetable-like material now to chemical. They spray it on letters and the like. A lot of prisons now, believe it or not, they get the mail and they are photocopying it. So you get a photocopied letter because they were sending. However, legal mail, you can't touch.
Right.
You can't search it and you can't touch it. So people, there's ways round, yeah? Corruption has gone through the roof as they've had less and less staff, less and less experience. Male prison estate, controversially, it's not controversial for me, too many female staff.
Well, this brings me on to my next question, funnily enough, because recently a few female screws have made the headlines because they've been videoed having sex with cons. So obviously they're building relationships that they shouldn't be building and they're having full-blown sex and they're not hiding the fact. So back in your day when you was a screw, did that go on? Were cons sleeping with screws?
Yeah, of course they were. Right, listen, an old-time con, a lag, I'll call him a jewel thief. I remember speaking to him, so he says, right, Miss Samworth, he says, I remember when they started employing female staff. Yeah, and he says, because everyone does the disclaimer, doesn't he? He says, don't get me wrong, Miss Samworth, some of them are really good at the job. He says, but basically, the discipline changed. If you've got all male staff, all the prison staff are male, you know, you've got some sort of regimen or whatever, discipline. He says, and then you saw the female staff come in, and it was different. Because you put boys and girls together, people have relationships, flirting, all that sort of thing. And he said, for me, the professionalism went. I'm going to do my disclaimer now. If you ask me top 10 screws I'd ever worked with, probably more than half would be lasses, quite definitely. However, I do believe in male prison estate, you need male staff. There's prisons now where more than half the staff are lasses. And they're young. A lot of young people going to this job. Loads of prisoners with charm. I have a friend who was a prison officer. His daughter started working the job, fell foul of that. You know, Con's being horrible with her. Con starts being nice with her. You know, bit of attention or whatever, bam. Way more illicit relationships. You'll never know the figures, though. When I was at Forest Bank, at least 3 or 4 lasses got walked to the gate. Caught, red-handed. They walk them to the gate. Right, we've got evidence on you. Go. You know, don't go to a tribunal. Don't do anything else. If you follow this up, we'll bring the police in and prosecute. They see people to the door.
What about further manipulation? So if a con's sleeping with a screw, they've now got the upper hand. The screw doesn't want that information leaked. They're going to lose their job, and now they're going to jail for it. So if a con sleeps with a screw, female prison officer, do they then go even further and say, right, now you're in my pocket, you work for me, sneak stuff in, get me privileges?
People fall in love. There was a nurse I knew when I was at Forest Bank, fell in love with a prisoner, Where she worked, she's not having sex with him. She's not slept with him. I did see her. She did end up leaving, and he got transferred out of prison. But I met her years after. They were together, been together a long time. They both worked. They got a couple of kids together. She says, Sam, when you meet the one, like our lass, you'll know. You know, you fall in love. It don't matter he's in prison. She got divorced while this guy's still in prison. Yeah, divorced a partner. When I saw them, they've been together a long time. There is people like that. However, you know, people do fall in love. There is a lot of charm in there. And obviously, once they've got you, you know, you are knackered. Let me tell you about a lad when I was at Forest Bank, a young lad. He just left. Nobody heard from him, didn't go sick, never heard nothing. Years later at Strangeways, a con who'd come back from dispersal prison says, do you remember Mr. I'll save his grace? Says, yeah. He says, you know what happened? I said, no. He says, we got him to bring a phone in. We were at him for 6 months, Mr. Samworth. Yeah, we got him to bring a phone in. Mithering him. And he was only young, this lad. Small, no presence, not good communication, maybe 20 years old. So they were at him. He brought a phone in. Yeah, he got about 800 quid, which was good money at that time. We said, we need another phone. He says, another 800 quid. He says, no, we've got you now. He says, we had him bringing in 2 litres of Coke a weekend, which were basically Jack Daniels. We'd got him, Miss Samworth, 12 months, and then he just left. That's the only thing he can do. A lass once messaged me. She says, look, I've fallen for someone. I've taken a phone in. What do I do? You know, they're wanting more stuff. They're wanting me to take drugs in. I says, realistically, you're either good at authorities and risk prison, or you leave. You leave, you don't get in touch with anybody, and you move house. That's the only thing you can do, because if they know where you live, someone will be turning up, and that's what she did. She messaged me a couple of years later, you know, thanks for your advice. You know, I moved on from that or whatever.
2 questions in one. What about male prison officers having affairs with male cons? And also, what's the percentage of long-serving prisoners falling in love with other men? They would go in there straight, but after a while, human nature, you're going to need some affection. If you're in prison for life, I'm sure you get people start cuddling in the cell.
So it's more, it's probably more talked about in American prisons. Very few gay male prison officers. I came across a few. There was some quite infamous prisoners who, shall we say, demanded sex from inmates.
Dominic Noonan. I've heard he made some pretty outrageous requests from cellmates and stuff.
I never understand. Obviously, the family reputation protected him a certain amount, and, you know, he was in court, I don't know how many times, maybe half a dozen times, through accusations, but witnesses never turned up. When he finally got nailed to the cross, as it were, you know, a lot of people had already turned their back on him, so the family reputation isn't going to protect him then. It's very much a sort of, it's not talked about. K-Wing, one experience, a lad, big lad, and I mean a big lad, 6'2", big arms, gym head, come to me, can I have a word, Miss Samworth? Says, yeah, no problem, you know. He went, no, can I have a word? I knew what I was going to say. Took him in a side room, broke down. He says, you know, I was, says, as somebody, we never actually said the word. He says, yeah. And now I knew the lad who was in cell with, evil, horrible. Not as big as him height-wise, but I'd heard things on the out that basically anything that moved, including animals, then he would have his way with him. He was horrible. I says, what do you want to do about it? He says, I don't want anyone else to know. So I thought, well, that's quite difficult. That has put me on the spot a bit. Anyway, I did paperwork. I told him I have to put this in. It'll go no further. If you don't want anyone to speak to you, you know, it'll go no further than me and the paperwork I have to put in security. Difficult to deal with. The thing is, if police had been involved, it's proof, DNA evidence, that sort of thing. I personally would like to think it didn't happen a lot. There's another lad who got out recently who I got on well with at Strange Ways. He was at Buckley Hall, which is, it was Cat C, was an open prison. I'm not sure where it is now. It might be Cat C again. It's been male and female as well at different times. Anyway, there was a lad there who basically was taking his cellmate every night. People were joking about it because his cellmate, you know, said they were toy fighting and stuff like that. However, he took his own life, that lad. Then it come out, other people come forward, that lad did end up getting convicted. But it's sort of a dark place. You know, men aren't going to talk about that. Mm. That lad who come to me on K-Wing, you know, he was just, he needed to tell somebody, but he knew nothing could be done about it. He didn't, you know, awful.
It's horrendous.
Very, very dark.
Shocking and dark, and that kind of shit will stay with you forever. Even just being in the vicinity and knowing that's going on is, even hearing it's quite haunting.
I'm sure it is actually illegal under prison rules for like two men to have sex. I'm sure it is. There's something about it. However, to finish that little episode on a lighter note, I was once on same wing, K-Wing. So we're having a standing roll check. So basically the whole jail's locked down. Wherever people are, they're counted. So on K-Wing, we've got people at work, people on visits. So I'm counting my landing and it comes back rolling correct, so you count again. And you count a third time. Now people are getting pissed and it comes back, it's K-Wing. So in comms area where they're doing it, they can see where the miscalculation is. So it's K-Wing. So I count my landing again, then my mate counts it, then our SO come out. So they worked it out and they said, it's your landing. I said, it's not my landing, I've got it banged to rights. Anyway, he said, go and count it again. So I went to count it again and got 2 Iraqi prisoners in bed together doing the do.
2 Iraqi prisoners?
Yeah, they're 2 Iraqi prisoners doing the do in the same bed.
That's very taboo. Terrorists in Strange Ways.
Yeah.
Would they recruit in there? Would they be treated differently?
Okay, so firstly, just to explain, it is a Cat B local. We do have a Cat A unit, yeah, and Cat A's can be held on the healthcare, hospital wing, and also the segregation. We had a lad on C wing, so that's the lifers wing. He got about 14 years. Gobshy, anti-establishment, like you would expect someone to be, who was in there for acts of terror or extremism. Just mulling about with everyone else. We had a hate preacher on the healthcare. We had him on there because he was of a certain age. But you know Abu Hamza? Mm-hmm. Yeah? So this guy is way above Abu Hamza's pay grade.
Do you remember his name?
I can't. I never have. However, won't speak to female nurses. You're on a lot of medication. You know, so he speaks to me. I was on a lot.
Yeah.
Can you ask the nurse for my meds? Yeah, I'll ask the nurse. So the nurse had come with the meds. Can you take them and give them me? No. Take them from the nurse. No, he wouldn't. Wouldn't take them off females, lasses. Wouldn't have anything to do with them. But he was very high up, you know, above anyone's pay grade. Young lad. We had a young lad who at times was on a VP wing with the sex offenders, yeah? Not a sex offender, but vulnerable. Soft ass. You know, people knew him about the jail. He'd be someone would give him a bit of tobacco to go and do something stupid or whatever. He come on the healthcare. So when he come on the healthcare, why you on here? He's come back into prison. He's got the bum fluff beard and that. Oh, Mr. Samworth, you know, I've turned to Islam and all this. And he just went on and on. You know, radicalized quite definitely. Vulnerable. Got nobody on the out, and a long-term con who spent a long time in dispersal prisons where they've got like the Muslim Brotherhood, the gangs and that people have known about for years but can't do anything about. He said a lot of them lads, Mr. Samworth, convert or get hurt. He says there is some of that. However, a lot of them have nobody. They're anti-establishment. He says, I remember when 9/11 happened, yeah, they're all going mad. Obviously, the Muslims banging the doors and that, you know, buzzing off it. He says, and you got your white British lads as well, because they're anti-establishment. A lot of them signed up because they got no one. You know, they're against the coppers, the Crown Prosecution Service, and they got a set of individuals here who are big in numbers who kicking back against the establishment, and they signed up willingly.
Do a lot of people revert to Islam in jail?
I think it depends on what prison and who's about.
And you said convert or get hurt. Did you witness any of that?
It does happen. I've seen lads who've come back. So accumulated visits. If you're in dispersal prison, say you're wherever down south and you're a Manchester lad, you can save your visits, yeah? And then you come back strange ways for a month. You've saved all your visits, maybe for 2 years, accumulated visits. You can have nearly a visit a day with your family. And I've seen lads come back strange ways. You know, what's crack with this Friday prayers? He says, Mr. Samworth, you can't fight everyone. I can't spend 10 years down the block. You know, you have to sign up. He says, when I get out, obviously, I'm not going there again. He says, but it comes on top. It really does come on top. So,
did you ever have many cons threaten you with threats that you took serious? If you don't do X, I'll find you at home.
A lot of that is dependent how you are. You know, my nan, treat and speak people how you want to be treated and spoke to this end. Yeah? And that's how I conducted myself. So, you know, there were people that did make threats. You know, one lad from the travelling community, he just got a life sentence, threatened to have me shot at the gate or whatever. So I placed him on report, which is an adjudication. It means he's going down the block. It's like a mini court within prison, get punishment. Now, one of his relatives were in. He says, I'll have a word with him. I think he gave him a crack, quite definitely, and said, "Why, you know, don't be threatening Mr. Samworth. You know, he's a decent screw." So when it was his nicking, I didn't turn up. They need me as a witness, so it got dropped. So, like I say, he was raw. He just got a life sentence. A lot of prison officers wouldn't say what I'm going to say now. There were people within the system, and I can understand why someone, and people have been visited or chased through Manchester Town Centre. I know why. They were nasty, horrible bullies. Yeah? Now, people will think that because you're a prison officer, you know, you're above the law or whatever. Quite definitely not. And there was some nasty, horrible bastards in there. And it has come to their house. It has come to their home or whatever. There's been blowback.
Were you ever attacked?
Assaulted, yeah. Quite a bit.
Badly?
I'll tell you the worst one. So there's two cons. I didn't know them. They haven't been on the wing long.
And you're all right speaking about this?
Yeah, of course I am. So one of them has come up behind me. It's there's a lot going on the wing. I'm sure we were doing medication. So there's an officer at the end of the wing letting prisoners off at night to go and get the meds. So you let a few off, they queue up, get the meds, come back on. Few more off, you've got a list. So I'm milling about the wing. I've had bother with these two in day. Wanted to go in a cell together, but they didn't come up and say, is there any chance at some point we can go to, it was like, or else. So one of them's come up behind me, towel, started choking me out. I always say this, and it's true, there's a reason MMA fighters tap into. If someone's choking you out, you'll know if you've been on door, someone's got you in a proper choke.
You panic.
Of course you panic. So he's choking me out, and the other guy is, you know, punching, kicking. So the lass who was on her, and this lass would be in my top 10, and she messaged me a few weeks ago, this. So Forest Bank, I left in 2004, so it's 20 years. She says, do you remember me? Jockey weight lass. Little, pretty, lesbian lass. And when I said jockey weight, 5'3", 5'4", 7 stone, yeah? And she couldn't get this lad who was punching and kicking me off me. I'm trying to deal with this one, everything you can, elbows, yeah? She wrapped herself around the other lad's leg. One of the cleaners pressed the alarm bell, so the troops come on. Spat at, bladed weapons, not being stabbed, but had people trying to stab me with bladed weapons.
And why would they do that?
Some of that is mental health on the healthcare. They just lose the plot.
Paranoia?
Paranoia. We had a lad. This is classic. When I was at Forest Bank, we had a lad called Downs, something like that. When I open a cell, particularly in segregation, healthcare, anywhere, I would open the cell, push the door in and step back and let them come out, yeah? In front of me, not open the door and turn me back on anyone. Anyway, this lad's come out, segregation at Forest Bank. He's walking in front of me, my mate's in front of him, boom, spun round, one-arrowed me, yeah? Didn't knock me out, boom. I am now at Strangeways, yeah? 3 years later, he's on K-Wing. So I've gone to SO. He was not stable. I said, need to get that lad off. Should be in the segregation or the healthcare, very dangerous. So we locked him up for the day. The next day, our governor is in a meeting about moving him, yeah? So we've unlocked in the morning. My SO's on there. And Nobby Nobbler, again, that's another alias. He's an ex-squaddy, best mate, never socialised on the out, but when I was on shift with him, it weren't like working. We had a cracking time. So I'm walking down the landing, I've opened. So Downs walks past. So me, just think, why is he at? Boom! One out of me again, straight on jaw. I spun round, he looked at me. I didn't go down, seeing stars, starts chasing him. My mate is on it. It was the SO who'd let him out, by the way, our manager.
Is that purposeful?
No, he did it by accident. He just unlocked all the doors. Me and my mate knew, leave him banged up. So he got me twice in.
Yeah, what about the other way round? Have you dished out a good hiding?
Never a thug. Yeah, I'll be bang honest. I've been in fights, right? I've been in fights. Me and my mate, we had a fight down the block. There was a young lad, very, very fit, about 24 years old, on exercise yard. He's like doing them commando press-ups up against the fence, all that sort of
stuff.
Yeah, fit as fuck. So the night before, he's been on a hooch. He's wrecked his cell. He's come down. So in the morning, my SO, let's go and have a word with him. Bam, we're at it. Very, very powerful lad. He got a couple of good ones in on me, a couple of good ones on my mate. Again, you're taught to fight in a 3, restrain people. Yeah? So it's a proper fight. We managed to get him to the floor. Someone's pressed alarm. Right. So he's placed on report. Yeah? We were trying to put him in another cell, remember now. So when he got his nicking, he got his nicking, he says, Mr. Samworth, have I been placed on report for assault? I says, what for? He says, I punch you. I says, yeah, and you punched. He says, yeah, I punched Mr. Lowe as well. He says, yeah. I said, did we punch you? He says, yeah. I says, do you want to make a complaint? He says, nah. I says, so you've been placed on report for disobeying an order. It's like a slap on the wrist, yeah? Mm. So in that situation, it was a proper fight. And the paperwork said that, the incident report. I was in fights at Strangeways where it's, fists. If it's one-on-one, it is a fight until there's another 2 staff. Mm. There were people, again, they would pick their audience who, if you got, there were very few Andy lads got beat up. Mm. If they got some little gobshite, Scouser or whatever, they'd go in and give him a good kicking. There were people who did that. Never part of that. And again, they pick their audience. I've seen people pulled. I've seen officers where people have gone over the top, maybe kicked someone in the head.
I was going to say, did you ever fall out with any work colleagues because they were bullying cons?
We had a con, 2 of us, under restraint, in a cell. This lad, on overtime, has run in and kicked him in the head. My mate, straight up, got him big throat up against wall. You ever do that again? Mm. Yeah? No, and it's dangerous as well, isn't it? Never part of that.
It was always fair.
Yeah. I never did anything I was ashamed of. Mm. Never.
The level of violence and the frequency of violence in there. How frequent was it? How often did it kick off?
Right. Strangeways, there'd be an alarm bell every day. Most days one on K-Wing, somebody refusing to move or something like that. If someone's refusing to go behind the door, there comes a point when they're going to get restrained. Serious violence, there weren't a lot of incidents. You would get scraps. Some people didn't fight fair.
Yeah, what violence occurs in there where weapons are used?
Now, I'd say it's probably increased tenfold as we speak now. Mm. Back then, always finding weapons. The old toothbrush, classic, 2 blades in it, strike someone with it. Everyone has a weapon, not necessarily going to get used, more of a deterrent. So serious incidents like that were few and far between. Staff assaults were few and far between. And the whole of the prison service, postcode lottery. You might get some prisons that are more violent than others, but that might be the nature of the people that they're dealing with and that.
What sort of injuries did you witness? What are the horrific ones that will never leave your mind? Because when you say putting the 2 razor blades in the toothbrush, I mean, I know that goes on, and it's for maximum injury in it. It's to make it difficult to stitch up.
Yeah, of course it is. You can't stitch it, so you get.
Have you ever seen anyone's face flapping about?
Yeah, I've seen people. They had a couple in strange ways when I were there, but like I said, few and far between. There is a level of violence, sort of next level. I would say the worst injuries I ever saw were people who had self-harmed. When I was on K-Wing, there was a lad, a bit of a cheeky chappy. He could scrap. He was a fighter. However, took offence to something somebody had said in a cell, and he hit me in the face with a flask. That lad's face was a mess. But yeah, not what people think. The scariest thing for me was hot water. Terrified of hot water, sugar.
Did you see some of that?
Yeah, saw the aftermath. And okay, the best one, didn't see it, I saw it on camera, was Sharpie, who was Paul Sykes' son. He was on the Cat A unit. Playing pool. He was bullying, taking canteen off people, I believe. 4 young lads on there, not fighters. He would have spit them up and chewed all 4 of them out. However, like I said, people don't fight fair. 3 of them playing pool, set about him with pool cues. I'm thinking it was Kieran Stapleton, the lad who shot the student in Manchester near McDonald's. Gets a mop bucket full of water and bags of sugar straight over him. Now, if he'd have poured it directly over his head, I would imagine adrenaline's kicked in. The size of Sharp, he was a big lad, dangerous lad. He got him good, neck, chest. The day after he's on healthcare, when he come back from hospital, he was a messing.
What does it do to your skin? Does it actually peel off?
Yeah, of course it does. He just stood there screaming. He could see skin peeling off him. If he'd have got it right over his head, I've no doubt the shock would have killed him. Again, spice, people getting in debt. They'll do anything. Another dealer on the wing. Right, your spice is free. Wipe your debt off. Napalm him, sugar, not water. Terrifying. The boilers, do you know what? So the boilers, in strange ways, there was boilers on every wing. They then gave them kettles, but you used to have a boiler. You could have turned them down. 97, 96 degrees, not 100, boiling. You'd have still been able to make a brew, but the damage would be, they wouldn't do it.
That's bizarre.
Yeah.
I mean, that's an easy problem solved.
Yeah, it is. So in dispersal prisons, long-term prisons, built as to hold Cat A's, not everyone in them is going to be Cat A, but they can do their own shopping, buy fresh produce and stuff like that. They have kitchens and, tales of people getting hot cooking oil poured over them. That is terrifying for me.
Do people piss in people's food?
So kitchens at Forest Bank, private. Kitchens at Strangeways, mint. They are inspected like takeaways. Yeah? They have a star rating, 5-star. Kitchens it's a premium job. You get well paid. But if somebody starts messing about with food, everyone knows who the kitchen workers are. They're going to be in bother. So your next question will be, what about the sex offenders? So at both prisons, the food travels from the kitchen in trolleys, hot trolleys, like portable flasks. Yeah, nobody knows which wing they're going to. So a member of staff would load them trolleys. So E-wing at Strangeways, out of the VPs, no one would know which trolley that was. Now, if you sent, some spoiled food, did some food, and it ended up on the lifers wing, C-wing, you're going to be in bother. So on the whole, nobody's going to tamper with food. It does happen, but very rare.
What about corrupt screws that are up to villainy in there, like distributing the steroids, for example, to the gym bods? or move in the white or the brown or the spice?
There was an Asian geezer on there. I think he was Pakistani. He was bang at it. A couple of times I put in security information reports, caught him in a cell with a load of the brothers smoking weed and that. It went nowhere. I was told to drop it because I just get labelled a racist. The drug distribution on the wing, I remember standing on B wing. Yeah, so B2 used to be young offenders. It changed to adults overnight. So you've got a new wing at Forest Bank, 86 prisoners. We were told it was going to fill up all 30 days. We got the worst of the worst. They come from dispersals, segregation units, all sorts. It was an handful. And one night, I stood and I watched, and you could see who were running, who were dealing. You're on your own. I'm with a new officer who's in the office, terrified. And end up in a situation with a lad who definitely got a bag of brown in his hand. And he's looking at me. I knew he got it. There's about 4 lads stood round me. And he said, Mr. Samworth, I'm not going to give you this. Because I said, what's in your hand? He says, what I'm going to do is go behind my door. Yeah? And take it with me and you can lock me in for the night. He said, I wouldn't hurt you, but I can't vouch for these lads. So you imagine someone's after some brown, they're getting banged up. So he went behind his door and I locked him in. So he saved face for me. He knew screws would be in first thing at morning search cell. They never found it. It happens. There's nothing you can do. You're one person on a wing.
On the outside, for years, we know that the most atrocious crimes have been committed and people have remained silent out of fear of being called racist. And you just said something there that tells me that was also and probably is going on in jails. You were told not to say anything or you'll be deemed a racist.
Oh, yeah, it happens at Strangeways as well.
So is there racial tensions in there?
Cat B prisons, local prisons, it's postcode lottery. So if you're in Salford or Manchester to commit a crime, you're going to Strangeways. If you're Bolton, Oldham, Wigan, Bury, you're going to Forest Bank. So you imagine Oldham, predominantly big Pakistani Muslim community. There's a lot of Pakistani Muslims, a lot from ethnic backgrounds, and then you've got white lads from Wigan and that. The prison service will play it down. I know a lad who's been out 6 months, horrendous. Another one who's been out 12 months. It's race wars in there, drugs, big money to be made in prison. You know, people getting slashed. A lad who got out, his mate, who was a handy lad, I don't know whether he's Pakistani, he was just said Asian for the sake of it, says, I want a word. So he's talking to him, he says, I can't hear. So this lad who's outside the cell, the white lad's on the inside, says, come to the side of the door, speak to you. So he went to listen. He had a ruler with a blade on, he went straight down the door, sliced his face wide open. Proper racial tension. You're not going to get that. It's not going to, the prison service aren't going to admit it.
What about some of the most infamous household names that came and went while you were there?
So Strangeways Healthcare, right? Good place to work, good staff. However, you know, you get the worst of the worst. I have spoke about Mark Bridger.
He's the worst of the worst.
I just couldn't tolerate him. I'll explain why
Yeah.
I couldn't tolerate him. His crime's bad enough. So he took a young girl, April Jones, from a village in Wales. It affected the whole of Wales. People were out searching for her. Horrible, horrible scumbag. So he came onto the healthcare because of nature at crime, and he was Cat A, and he was high profile. They don't want him in the seg, people like that. If they'd put him on a Cat A unit, they'd have killed him, obviously. His crime is horrendous, but it's hard when you meet these people, smarmy, they have narcissistic traits, all about them. Other people, prison staff, you know, sort of are like rabbits in headlight, like the fame thing. It used to sicken me. People had come on, oh, we've been speaking to Mark, he's a bit upset, and you'd be thinking,
So what?
Yeah. But if I was going to work there, you know, I was always professional. The mad card, so he started playing the mad card, which people do. You know, as a kid, you must have been a kid, you've done something wrong. Your parents have got you, or somebody's got hold of you, or the coppers have got hold of you. You've done this, and you start making up tales and lying, or So, trying to act mad. And he's straight as a die. So one day, the servery is where they serve meals. So there's 3 lads on the servery who I've picked to clean on their healthcare. Yeah. I've let Bridger out of his cell. He's gone to the servery. So when I've got to the servery, there's something missing. So I've looked, and I've looked at one of the lads, and he's looking sheep. What's missing? He says, Mr. Samworth. I says, no, what's missing? So he says, spaghetti hoops. I says, put them on top. He's Mr. Samworth. Put them on top. So he put them out. Bridger goes back to his cell. I says, you're not getting your dinner. Oh, it was April's favourite. Boom, slamp door.
He said that?
Yeah, favourite meal. He's saying things like she's visiting his cell. He's trying to get some sort of insanity plea or whatever, but it's pathetic. I were absolutely livid.
I mean, how do you deal with someone that's killed a child that behaves like that? What stops you from sneaking in their cell and ringing their neck?
You couldn't, right. Firstly, there's no way you're sneaking in anyone's cell on healthcare. Fully cameraed up. Here's the thing as well.
Did you ever have visions of killing him?
Oh, yeah, I've fucking punched him in the face every day. And my manager has
removed...
Talk to me
about that.
Right, so my manager has removed me. I've been in ACT review, so the ACT document, assessment, caring, custody, teamwork, suicide and self-harm document, yeah? They used to have one called 2052, yeah? But what the prison service said, there was no sort of care around that document. So this document, you might have a chaplain, someone from mental health, a prison officer, one of my managers on healthcare, and Bridger in there talking, and it's all about him. And he'd be saying something like, oh, I'm a bit upset. My dog's really old. I'm never going to see it again. Me, April Jones, my manager, Mr. Samworth, there's something you need to be doing. No, I'm all right. Mr. Samworth, is there something you need to be doing? They would excuse you. You couldn't hide it. Pathetic self-harming. And I'm not knocking self-harming, People start somewhere. Him, pathetic scratches. Oh, I've self-harmed, and you just want to...
If someone like him was caught or a screw knew that someone like that child killer was bleeding out, would there be a rush to save him, or would you...
Right, on the healthcare, people are checking in on people. He's not going long enough. Now, quite definitely, I'd be walking past his cell. I don't know whether I would when I was in the job. You work as a team. Part of that, I enjoyed where I worked. It was rewarding work. It gives you nightmares and stuff like that. That's part of it, and being professional or whatever. There's people who won't understand it. I couldn't do it now. I've got no tolerance for people like him now. People who harm kids, no tolerance. Oh. I had nightmares, not frequent, but his house was on the news. They knocked it down, and I'm all for that. Like Cromwell Street and Fred West. Yeah. Get rid of these properties so there's no ghoulish, yeah. So his house was gone, and rightly so. But I could see his house, picture it, daughter in the window in one corner. I couldn't get in the house, and then he'd appear in the bottom window. So my daughter's in the house with him, and it was fucking, wake up, be put about for a couple of days. That's after I left the prison service. That went away. But you can't control certain aspects. Like I'd be dreaming about motorbikes and rugby and stuff like that. Me, not that creature. Do you know what I mean? Gets under your skin. My manager, I'll not mention her name. Lovely lady. Never thought. You have to understand, nurses are there for everyone. So the worst of the worst, they're going to give them the same care as they'll give the best of the best. When she left the job, she said to me, and she never swore, she says, you know him, he was a see you next Tuesday, and I fucking hated him. I fucking hated him. He was horrible. So it's the whole persona and how they behave. Yeah,
that would affect me. I want to move on to your mental health in a moment.
Yep.
And I know that I've asked a lot of questions about a lot of horrible stuff.
No, it's fine.
It paints the picture of sort of where you are now and what happened and why you left the prison system. But before we go there, so you've told me that's the worst prisoner, and rightly so.
Yeah, I hate him.
What about the most dangerous prisoners in there?
Right, I'll give you one now. He's dead. Again, I'll not use his name. Very clear. So this prisoner was a prolific self-harmer. Yeah, prolific.
I'm talking about prisoners that have got people under manners doing terrible things for them.
Well, just listen to this guy. He was a threat to staff, a massive threat to staff. He inserted, so self-harming gets to a certain level, people insert things. So they'll have a wound and they'll insert things. He had a piece of glass inserted next to his femoral artery in his leg, very dangerous. And he had a piece of glass pretty much all the time up his backside that was like, with a handle that was a weapon. They know that because he'd been to hospital and, you know, had scans and stuff like that. He had Hep B, AIDS, probably Hep C, and he would weaponize bodily fluids. When he was on one, he would flow, you know, spit in your face, blood products. He was dangerous to deal with, and very unpredictable. Prisoners who had influence, again, in strange ways, they'd be maybe high up gang members, crime family members. You're not knowing what they are controlling or up to. They would, you know, there's nothing being found in the cell. You know, it's all covert. A lot of it used to be people who wanted drugs could get drugs. They could afford to pay for them and the like, yeah? So there weren't a lot of violence based around drugs. The problem with spice is it's a nasty drug, way worse than heroin, 100 times worse. The effects, the side effects are worse, you know, highly addictive. People get in debt. So they get in debt, so they can make a lot of money. If it's cheap to produce, and they make a lot of money. Like tobacco now, prison tobacco. They ban smoking in prison. People still smoke. It is a, you know, I don't know how much they make. Someone once told me that a Rizzler would be £1, maybe more now. Just a Rizzler, £1, and everything else. So you wouldn't know who was dealing. If I'm a big man, so I'm on K-Wing, I'm a main man, I'm a gang member, you come on, you might not be one of my minions, but we know you've got drugs, then I'm having a share of that, yeah? There is a hierarchy, might be on different wings. Someone might have distribution prison-wide or whatever, and that can change.
And would people enforce the law in there with threats of, if this doesn't get done, things will happen on the outside to your family, for example?
You had a lot of people, a lot of prisoners, canteen gets taken off them. They have to put numbers on the phone. So you threaten me, so I put your girlfriend's number on my phone so you can phone her at my expense. Family members will get threatened, you know. Yeah, your son owes me 200 quid. You set this 200 quid there, or he's going to get filled in, sliced up, or whatever. That does happen. Officers, it depends on the officer. The ones, it used to be the bullies, the really bad ones, the ones, some were nasty. I could use far worse words than that. You know, a few, maybe dirty dozen. I could get 6 officers now and tell you, and they're nasty. And if I mention them to any prisoners, they'd be saying, other 6 might take a while. They possibly, you know, might get chased through Manchester town centre, or somebody might visit their home. For me now, good officers, yeah, might be a threat because they try to do the job properly. You know, they try to instill discipline. So it has changed. As the prisons have become more violent, less experience, both management and officers, younger age group, less staff. You know, if I'm on K-Wing now, you know, people might see me as a problem because I'm looking in cells, I'm seeing what's going on. Probably won't want that. Female staff used to be protected. If somebody give a female member of staff some verbal, yeah, even if perhaps you weren't the nicest, someone's going to have a word in their shell. Like if you assaulted a female member of staff, that happened just before I left Strangeways. A lass on our wing got filled in by a con. He got absolutely leathered. He got hospitalised him because when he come out of the block, they put him on a wing. He was battered within an hour.
And who battered him?
The lads. So there was like a code. You know, he could have got away with banging me, and people might have said, you're out of order banging Mr. S. He banged Miss.
And would the cons and screws come together in a situation like that?
You wouldn't have to say anything. You know, there were a lot of cons, right? So when I was I'm going back to K, I'm going there because it was a chaotic wing and it had an eclectic mix of people on it. You had lifers who come from dispersals, who'd been misbehaving, people with mental health problems, all sorts. Yeah. But if you got someone on who was mentally unwell, and somebody else were maybe, after taking the meds off them, you know, some of these mental health meds or the tobacco, the cleaners, you know, people would stand up for him. Or you'd say, Smithy, that lad in there, keep an eye on him.
Did you ever get to know somebody in jail that after a while you thought to yourself, I believe he's innocent?
Yeah. There was quite a few. I tell you what happens with a lot of lads. They might have an history, they might have a criminal history, and they get fitted up for something, and a lot of them had chucked their hand in, go guilty, maybe take a 3-year because they won't want to run the risk of getting 8 or something like that. We had some lads from Moss Side who were ex-gang members. Well, a couple of them were, one might have been active, one was ex, and a couple of other lads got lifted. They were on K-Wing for 2 years, on remand. That's a long time. Most other than them was probably 18 months. Yeah? 2 years. I remember saying to one of them, what are you in for? Nothing, Mr. Samworth. When it goes to court this, we will walk. And they did. 2 years on K-Wing, they behaved, you know, kept their heads down. When they went to court, they were released. Police wanted them off the streets. So, yeah, people do get looked up.
And is there more innocent people in jail than people would care to realise?
There's a lot of people in jail who shouldn't be in jail, could manage them better. You look at the addicts, you know, again, if you go back, like a lot of people, the word smackhead and that, people get upset about that. I've used that word in past. But then you get to know some lads, some addicts.
Yeah, smackheads don't like being called smackheads, do they?
No.
Or junkies.
You know, a lot of them, childhoods, horrendous childhoods, abuse. You know, they do have choices. However,
they have a very bad start.
Yeah, of course they do. And no counselling, no nothing like that. You know, no therapies. Your high profile Bridger, you know, psychologist's going to see him, looks good on the CV. They're not going to see Smith on I-Wing, who's in for his, you know, 20th sentence for like burglaries to feed his habit, which is masking his abusive childhood or something like that.
Nah. What was Christmas Day like in jail?
Nice question. Very quiet, right? There is potential over Christmas. It is heightened the risk of kickoffs. Christmas Day, I'll tell you what they want. They don't want to be reminded it's Christmas Day, although they know. Maybe a decent scran. I'll explain that after. You know, a meal. Phone the loved ones, and that's it. You know, they're not doing a lot. It is a stark reminder. It's a smashing face. If you got kids, you're in prison. God knows how long to serve. So maybe a phone call, a half-decent meal. Again, people who kick off, you know, old people in hospital food shit. You have to understand that you're dealing with a potentially volatile clientele. If people haven't been behind the door or on the landing, and I don't like it when people do this, you know, you can't have empathy because you haven't been there, but it can be dangerous.
What's it like for the screws Christmas Day?
Shit. Absolutely shit. This Christmas that's just gone is the first time in 15 years me and our lass have been off Christmas Day. Because when I was in the prison service, you'd end up working pretty much because other people wouldn't, New Year or Christmas. So we used to go to our family. So the idea was I'd work Christmas Day. I won't want Christmas Day off and then in Boxing Day. So I'd work Christmas Day, go and see our family Boxing Day. Yeah, that sort of thing. Usually early bang up Christmas, you know, tea time or whatever, so you get a bit of time. But it's shit.
When did the job start taking its toll on your mental health?
I think from day one, I'm going to be honest now, looking at it, you know, you do put things in box and put it away. However, I got injured. So February 28th, 2015, I'm enjoying job, I'm working lots of overtime. I'm on the healthcare. March 1st, what a car crash. What a car crash. The whole of Strange Ways changed. They moved people wings. So the VP wing moved somewhere else. The reception wing moved somewhere else. This is all in one day. They moved loads of prisoners. They changed the ways of working. We were about 80 staff short on the 28th of Feb, covered by overtime. Not, I worked 60, 70 hours a week, mate, all my prison career. And people would, you could earn good money. 1st of March, we're no staff short. We got 15 too many. They've not employed anymore. They've not got rid of anyone. Just different ways of working. We were short, on his arse, car crash. My last 6 months, I was in so much conflict, me. Prisoners got the upper hand. The regime went to rat shit, a lot of bang up. Now you imagine, you've been out every day. You go to work in prison, you know you're out at night, or you know you're going to get your visits and stuff like that. You imagine you're in your cell, your mum, your girlfriend, your kids are waiting in visits hall, 2 hours late. They'll have been stood. There's no nice airport lounge for them to sit in, but your visit is 2 hours late. So they're stood waiting for you. You're in your cell steaming. Yeah. Prisoners, being very confrontational. A lot of prison officers, again, people don't like this, didn't have bottle. Yeah. Some good talkers and that. But if you're in my face, fucking late for my visit or whatever, officer backs down or whatever, they're all getting on it. So, you'd see your mate, someone's in his face, you'd step up. Oh, easy, everyone's late. We'll get you there. We don't like what's happening, that sort of thing. Confrontation. Very confrontational, very stressful. You don't see it at the time. I didn't see it. I got injured September 4th. I went to work September 5th, 2015. Nurse sent me home. My arm felt like a chicken leg had been pulled off. Hurt my arm the day before. When I went to see my doctor 2 weeks later for a sick note, blood pressure was 220 over 160. Resting heart rate was like 125. I was dying. Stroke or heart attack imminent, incoming. It was a very stressful time. I was in conflict pretty much every day. You'd run onto a wing. I remember going on the Cat A unit. So the outside of the Cat A unit at that time, you got Cat A's here, you got VPs the other side, which makes sense. If you're a Cat A prisoner, you're not going to associate with someone who messes about with women and kids, are you? So that was a sensible security move, having the wings separated. But I ran on, there's 30 staff in front of me, and I ends up hands on. There's 2 officers wrestling with it, and there's 30 screws looking on. They were struggling. So I'm on, and I'm involved in it. I'm looking around and thinking, what's going on? And that's how it was. People, they just get on with their job. They take shit and bravado. If you're having a go at someone and they're backing down, you're going to come up. And that's what happened to the whole of the prison system from 2012 to 2015. Different ways of working, less staff. The population just becomes super violent. Bang up. During lockdown, they said lockdown is when the bang up started. It started before that. But during lockdown, there were people who weren't out the cell for a week at a time, no shower. They were feeding them at the doors. You imagine you're locked up, there's no visits, no nothing, people becoming violent and angry. So they were feeding them at the doors. They didn't let them out the cells for fear of kick-offs, mutiny, riot.
Caging them up like rabid dogs.
Yeah, treat people like animals. Again, people don't understand that when they're going about a holiday camp mentality. 70s and 80s, brutal. Bang up, slopping out. I mean, toilets in houses, we've had them in houses for years. Prison was slopping out. How backwards that?
Just explain slopping out.
Right, slopping out, you're basically shitting and pissing in a bucket. However, you don't shit in a bucket at night when you've got cellmates, yeah? So this is when the parcels started happening. They shit in newspaper, bog roll or whatever, and drop it out the window onto the exercise yards. So they had parties of cons going around the exercise yard cleaning up shit parcels. And then they'd have a sluice on the wing, so you'd come out with your bucket and put it down a sluice.
How did your career come to an end?
Got injured. So I didn't know at that point. So like I say, September 4th, I'm in a restraint. Yeah, young lad. It was on B-Wing. Very fit. There's me. So at that point, I'm about, how old was I then? 62. It was 215, 50 odd. Yeah. There's another lad who is a similar age and a lad who's about 42. The lad, we ends up taking him to segregation. Yeah. My arm feels like it's come out of a socket. I know I've done something bad. The lad who were a bit younger than us, he stressed him. I thought he was going to have a heart attack. And the other lad, same age as me, ex-squaddy, he's hurt his back. All three of us are fucked. So we're in the seg, outside the office. We've just brought him down. When you take people to solitary or segregation, you hand over to the seg staff. That's supposed to de-escalate. So he's kicking off with us. The seg staff take over. Makes sense. They're talking to him. They bring him down, yeah? I'm outside the office. Two lads are injured. I'm injured. Everyone's concern was this lad. Yeah, the governor asking him whether he's all right, everyone else. No concern for us. Coming to work next day. Nurse, what's up with you? Could I have some painkillers? Sent me home. Never went back. I got a sick note. My missus didn't want me to go back. The longer I was off, the worse I got. A raging anger. You can say anxiety. It was anger. Blood pressure was out of control. Like I said, risk of heart attack. I just lost it, proper lost it.
Was you diagnosed with anything psychological?
I got diagnosed with PTSD. I put myself through therapy. Salford Psychological Services. My doctor probably saved my life. Very supportive she was.
Was this during or since you've left?
No. When I got injured and I went to see her,
yeah.
She was amazing, very supportive. At the 4-month stage of being on the seat, I said to her, listen, I can't go back. I said, the procedure is I'll be off a certain length of time. They'll have me in. I might get a bit of a backhander and I'm gone. And that's the way I need to go. I can't go back. She says, that's fine. She was very, very supportive. The last who I saw for therapy was amazing. I just unloaded on her. Everything, all the shit, all the incidents. We did no CBT. We did no problem solving, none of that. It was just me. Yeah.
Did you get no support at all throughout your career?
No. I try not to swear now, you know.
But that's insane.
No, you don't. The most you're going to get is probably 6 half-an-hour therapy sessions. They had what they call a care team, yeah? So when I was on the healthcare, I've been on K-Wing, I got an email from the care team. Dear Officer Samworth, we realise you were recently assaulted. Blom, blom, blom. Hope you're all right now. If you like to talk to anyone, get in touch. So I'm looking at this email. So I gets back in touch. But when was I assaulted? Oh, this prisoner Downs. 2 years. 2 years previous this assault. And they're just getting round to contacting me 2 years after. There's no support. A good number one governor, yeah, will raise the morale in a prison. Quite definitely. A bad one. But no, you support your colleagues.
I mean, the time that we've sat here, and I know it's been a very serious conversation, and that's the exact route I wanted to go down today. But the things you've witnessed that I'm acutely aware of and I've remembered vividly: suicide, drug abuse, extreme violence, sexual predators, child killers, molesters in there, extreme drug use, dirty protests. The list is endless of the stuff that you've experienced as a prison officer. To me, that requires, if not daily, certainly weekly therapy or counsel.
Right, okay, so I wouldn't change my prison career, but depending where you work, like K-Wing, we had very good management when I first went on, and they'd take anyone from the jail, so it was like a zoo. It was like a zoo. So a lot of it is where you work. There will be officers who, you know, have seen nothing, kept out of the way. These officers now who spent a whole career going to pub at dinner and tea, getting drunk. They were drunks. And again, you know, I don't know why they were alcoholics, stressed the job, in the wrong job, or whatever, but you did get that. But equally, there'll be prison officers now who carry stuff with them, Time for me was a great healer. I wouldn't say I got PTSD now.
What was the hardest part about being a prison officer?
Right, I'm glad you've asked me that. The hardest part for me was being myself. Yeah, being true to myself. Yeah, chatty person. I'm a chatty person. I do not like. I don't like to see people treated badly. Yeah, I don't like bullying. But being myself, I'll give you for instance, because this one always makes me smile. I'm on K-Wing again. Imagine 3 landings, 200 prisoners, 6 staff. It's towards the end of my career, this. It's not my wing. Yeah, I'm on overtime. On the 2's landing, on one side of the wing is basic prisoners behind the door. They're on punishment. Yeah. A sentenced prisoner on punishment is required to wear prison clothing. Yeah. Basic regime, corned beef tracksuit. It's corned beef in colour, not made of corned beef. Yeah. There's 2 lads behind the door. The SO, who I knew very well, says, Sam, see them 2 lads there? This is about 2 o'clock in the afternoon. Yeah. It's not my wing. So I'm just doing what I'm told. Them 2 lads at 4 o'clock, give them 5 minutes on the phone each. So I looked at him, I says, why are you telling me? There's a wing officer. There's one of these officers. I says, I'll tell you why I'm telling you, because I know you'll do that. I promised them, it's on me, that they can have a phone call. They've been little fuckers. If I ask him, he's not giving them a phone call. I said, so you've dropped it on my toe? Says, yeah. So 10 to 4, everyone's locked up. All the wings locked up. Yeah. All the staff at the end of the landing waiting for the food to come so they can serve meals. So I looks all the staff and I says, and these lads have been on the buzzer. Want a fucking phone call, want a fucking phone call. All the staff stood there. What are you doing? I'm giving them a phone call. Soft arse Yorkshire twat. All this. Yeah. Trying to ridicule me. The more people did that, I buzzed off it. So I goes to the door. I says, listen, lads, I'm going to be quite blunt now. All the staff at the end of the landing, where the phone was, yeah, they're pissed that I'm giving you a phone call. The SO's put you on my toes. So what you're going to do, you're going to have 5 minutes, come back. You're going to have 5 minutes, come back. All right, you know what I'm saying? Yes, boss. Went down, 5 minutes, good as gold. Thanks, boss. Went down, good as gold. Went off shift an hour and a half later. An hour and a half, non-stop, while we're serving meals and everything. Yorkshire twat, soft arse, soft arse, soft arse. I weren't bothered. Do you know what I mean? Being yourself, being true to yourself.
Are you yourself now?
I am now, yeah. It took a lot longer.
Bit of work.
Yeah, it took a lot longer than I thought. So I didn't go back to work, just let me work this out, 23. I didn't go back to work properly till January 2023. Residential care worker, working with kids, that's what I wanted to do. So when I'm out of work, we're on his arse then, because I'm sole provider. Our last, bless her, this will make me a bit tearful as well. I'm fucked in head. Yeah, really. Comes in one day, got a job. So what do you mean you've got a job? We've got nothing. We're on benefits a very short period of time. She's out to work then, 15 hours a day, caring the community, getting paid for 10 hours. And we've done that. All was going well. We moved, left Manchester 2019. I'm still not right. I said I went on TV, I was interviewed. I said it was all good. It wasn't. Now I'm looking back, I can reflect on that. I wasn't well. 2021, so that was a tough year. I'm at home full-time with my daughter. You know, kids are lazy. They don't clear the plates. They don't tidy the room. So I'm clearing the plates, tidying the room. She's not eating. I said to my missus, she's not eating. Over a couple of months, it became very obvious. She's 14 then. Got an appointment with doctor. We're waiting for CAMS, mental health services. Yeah, I know there's something wrong with her. My missus now worrying, but she's working full-time. Anyway, she gets a diagnosis in August. She's anorexic. She's been under CAMS now 7 weeks. They've done fuck all. My daughter's now dying, really ill. September 4th, 2021, I has a fucking heart attack, me. In gym, leg press. As I'm coming out of the gym, I just felt like shit. I thought I'm going to die. As I'm walking across car park, someone stuck an axe in my shoulder. Left shoulder, yeah, fucking pain. I gets in my car. my body is going to let go of everything, both ends. So I made a decision very quickly. I thought,
I'm with you, brother.
it's not about me.
But you're an empath.
So I thought, because I were dying anyway, I have the indignity of messing myself in my car and probably dying in car park or drive home. So I thought, I'm not going to see my daughter or missus again. So I drove home. I gets home, walked in and said to my daughter, phone your mum, she's at work. Tell her to come home, tell her when she gets in the car, phone me. I went upstairs, bathroom, unloaded everything. Went and laid on bed. At that point, I thought we were going, so my daughter come in. I says, when your mum, she's 14. When your mum phones, tell her I'm having a heart attack, phone an ambulance. But tell her please to drive careful. So she did. Anyway, Mrs. arrived, got me downstairs, elevated me feet. Ambulance arrived. It weren't for me, we were going to another call. They made decision to come. He come in, he says, you're having a heart attack. I says, no shit. Got in the ambulance, give me aspirin. Mrs. come out with a bag to get an ambulance, locked down. Can't come, sorry, love. So once I got an ambulance, I'm fine, yeah? Do you want painkillers? Give me fucking everything you got. Didn't make no difference. That was about 6:30, that. They finished putting stents in my right-hand coronary artery at about 10:15. That's the first time pain had gone. Ambulance said I should have been dead. Consultant said quite definitely should have, shouldn't have made it out at gym, really. 2 weeks later, my daughter's in hospital. We had admitted she's dying, not eating, tube down her throat, being fed, forcibly fed. So, just think of my missus. I've had a heart attack, less than a month later, my daughter's in hospital dying. We spent 2 weeks with her. Still not right, me. I'm doing days, my missus is doing 14-hour nights with my daughter trying to get her to eat. Anyway, we made a decision, take her out of hospital, and we sorted her out. All my missus spent 6-8 months in trenches every day, bought a little table, sat opposite, getting her to eat. So that were a tough year. And then 2022, I started work.
How's your daughter now?
This is a sad thing about eating disorders, right? It's not, it's got the highest mortality, anorexia, of any mental health illness. My daughter, she's doing all right, again, difficult to talk about. She's doing all right. Proud of her. She missed last 2 years of school. Got her in college. I knew she weren't going to finish. Dropped out of college. Got herself a job. Just applied for loads. Got a job. She's working now. She's looking for different jobs. So yeah, I'm grateful for them things.
I'm racking my brain and trying my hardest to think of how we can wrap this up now with something positive. I think there'll be a part 2 with you and me, and I hope there is, because I think there's lots more to talk about and there's a lot of layers to you. I would imagine that your friends, family and daughter will watch this back. What would you say to your daughter now?
Well, my missus, I say she was in trenches. We had a little table, like I say. My daughter's there, missus there, yoghurt. She's got to have a yoghurt, daughter's like. And with anorexia, the brain's starved of fats. Yeah, so they don't think straight. There's no logic, nothing else, plus how they see themselves. They were fucking going at it for 2, 3, 4 hours over a yoghurt. Missus, you're having it, not having it. I'm sat there, I'm thinking, just leave it, just leave it, just leave it. No. And in the end, she ate the yogurt. So what I would like to convey to people, because eating disorders, social media on the rise, there's nothing out there, mental health services, that is going to, it's not a miracle cure or anything like that. It's devoted single parent families. I feel for them, you know. My missus, you know, ground it out. I did do my bit where I could, trying to support them both. It's difficult. It brought us closer together. It's a continuing battle. People have anorexia for life. It's like alcoholism. You know, it's a constant battle. But this year, where we are, I am grateful. It's tough.
Are there groups you can go to, numbers to call?
There is. But what we found, right, that really it's going to be on your toes. If your kid's got an eating disorder, suffering, it's going to be on your toes. Yeah, and it's going to be hard, really hard, harder than anything you've ever done. Yeah, no amount of therapy or anything else is going to make them better. It's you know, and it's a continuing. I won't say battle. It's somewhat continuous. You're always going to worry about your kids and that, and want to support them.
So where do you go from here?
Right. So
tell me something optimistic about the future, just so we can end it on a.
Right. I'll tell you Christmas Day, shall I? So fucking.
I'd like to see you smile before we say
no,
goodbye.
I will. It is a happy thing. I might still be crying tears of happiness. So Christmas Day, first Christmas in 15 years, me and Alice aren't working. Yeah, so I've had flu, she'll say cold or whatever, 2 weeks before, 2 weeks after. I felt like shit me. It wiped me out. I think the year was just so stressful, all sorts of things, that my immune system just... So Christmas Day. And it is a happy view. So I'm ill. So my missus is disappointed because I'm ill, yeah. I had fuck all to eat and I had a couple of swigs out of a can of cider. My missus is having a few drinks. In fact, she was drinking my Jack Daniels. And tea time, my daughter's come with her boyfriend, yeah. So they've done the rounds that he has to do and they're here. So they start drinking. They drank all my vodka, wine, all sorts. They're both pissed as farts. My daughter's really funny when she's drunk. And it was nice seeing her like that. She was having a laugh. We got music on. She's dancing, you know. And I said to my missus, just look at that. You know, the day after, yeah, I work, just look at that. I'd have given anything for that. It was a good night. We played games all night, cards. And going into this year, you know, she's doing amazing things. She went out and worked. She got no qualifications. She struggled. She's got a job. She's looking at other jobs. Hopefully she's got another job now. And seeing her going about, living a life, going to festivals, you know, Christmas markets, on train with her boyfriend, just getting out and about and getting on with life. You know, so hopefully this year, summer, me and the missus, we've got a dog. He's 8.5 months old now. I lost my dog last year. People will never understand that. That finished me. Missus, we need another dog. Me, I don't want one. So we've now got this Brian, 8.5 month old golden retriever. You know, I'm out up early in the morning. Just have a good year. You know, put everything behind us finally. I am super optimistic. I feel myself probably this last 2 weeks, first time since I joined that job, if I'm going to be honest. You know, I feel capable of dealing with anything.
Do you feel like you got a little bit off your chest today?
Yeah, quite definitely. Some of that, it is important because there's a lot of kids out there. I think almost 800,000 kids were referred for eating disorders during lockdown in this country. Nearly 1 million.
In fact, let me round this up because I feel like I owe you. I can't give advice on eating disorders, and the words of wisdom you've just given people, I hope that helps and heals and soothes people that need it and maybe steers them in the right direction. But what you've done today is admirable, and I hope people watching this, in particular men that are struggling, take a great deal of strength because you've sat opposite a man and you've let it go. And I just want to say thank you for coming on, being so honest. I appreciate it. You've got my number now. my door's open, and it means a hell of a lot that you were comfortable enough to open up to me the way you did. So I look forward to us doing this again.
I'll give you a parting shot, right? I told you I had some counselling last year. I'm going to say therapy. I put myself through it again. I met a guy, like I told you, I had 4 months with him. He was a good listener. The only person I've ever met who understood me, but he come back at me, he made notes, he asked me questions, he challenged me on some of my things around my childhood, my mum dying and everything else. Clarity, I got some mental clarity from that, and, you know, people shouldn't be scared of that. But credit where credit's due as well. You know, yourself, you've got to be sort of open or whatever and take things on board. And I do appreciate that. That is...
No, I do as well. And I will be cheering for you. Thank you, mate.
Mate, job's a good one. Thank you.
Brother. Thank
Your
you,
pleasure. A pleasure.